Item D31 is a request for a resolution establishing a transaction fee for pawnbrokers. Mr. Wojcik.
Well, I just, I read, if you turn to page 103 in the packet, the one thing that concerns me when I see some of these, in the last paragraph, it says the fee will not cover the entire expense of regulating the local pawn industry. And, I point to this is going to be the second consecutive year where the, not even inflation or size adjusted, our budget's actually shrinking in size for the second consecutive year. And, when we're charging fees that are essentially subsidizing different industries, I think we have to take a look at that as well. So I would just submit that. I don't think we're going to take any action on this particular one tonight, but these fees that we charge should be able to cover the cost. I just don't think we can afford to subsidize certain industries and not others anymore. With that, I'll turn it over to the council.
All right, could I have a motion, please?
I'll move approval.
Could I have a second? Could I have a second? Motion fails for lack of a second. Is there a motion to deny?
I will move to deny.
All right, could I have a second? Once again, could I have a second? Motion failed. Oh, we have a second. Motion by Wojcik, second by Snyder to deny this request for resolution establishing the transaction fee. Before I vote on this, or we vote on this, Mr. Adkins, what does this do if this resolution is denied?
The resolution currently in effect, namely the current transaction fee, would remain in effect.
All right, which states what?
$1.50. $1.50, as I recall.
Yep, that's
Yes, it's $1.50.
Yes, $1.50.
All right. All right, I have a motion and a second to deny the request for the resolution establishing the transaction fee. All those in favor of denial? Oh, Mr. Nowicki had a question or comment?
No, I wanted to make a comment.
All right.
I understand what Councilmember Wojcik is getting at, and I expected that, and that's true. We want our fees to cover everything, but that's not the question before us. The whole thing was establishing or changing the transaction fee to at the request of the police department to reflect the change in the cost to us about it. And so I think they felt, and somebody felt, when it was put forward, that it'd be fair that we pass this on. Now, it's not to make up, I think, legally, or I don't know if I'm talking legally. I got a city attorney there, so I don't need to say legally, but actually the whole question is about the transaction fee and not about fees in general. So I would suggest that we stick to that. And if the request and the recommendation was to cover it because the actual cost is $1.10 per billable transaction, and that's what they're asking to be paid for, then maybe somebody can get a little bit upset that we're charging $1.50 for what costs us $1.10.
And maybe, Mr. Aston, you want to explain why the reduction, or I can explain the reduction. There's an automated pawn system that regulates this, and they reduced the cost to us by 40 cents. So the police department felt it was appropriate that we pass that along to the pawn shop operators.
Mr. President, I have the ordinance now in front of me. It
Yes.
says the billable transaction license fee shall reflect the cost of processing transactions from the respective classifications and other related regulatory expenses as determined by the city council. In other words, whatever cost the city incurs in processing these transactions is the fee that should be charged.
But as I read this says a fee will not cover the entire expense of regulating the pawn industry. That's pretty generic, and there's other expenses besides this transaction fee.
It's not covering the
Right.
police department.
Yes, it's not covering other things. So,
Labor costs.
Which, according to the ordinance, it could legally
Okay.
cover all the expenses.
So right now it's at $1.50. The request was to reduce it to $1.10. If we vote to deny this, as is recommended by the motion, it will remain at $1.50, which will thereby help offset some of the costs of the police department. Is that the way you all understand it?
And I would add, too, that we can certainly follow up with a committee meeting to discuss this and see what the real costs are. I imagine this is relatively small relative to a lot of the things that we deal with. If if we're not covering the full cost of the fees, the reality is the taxpayers are stepping in and paying the difference. So that's my take on the whole thing.
I have a motion and a second to deny the request for a resolution. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Any abstentions? I read that 5-2 with Mr. Nowicki and Mr. Ruska voting nay.